Hey everybody, I am Joe Tobiason, Washington State elopement photographer based in Seattle, and today I'm continuing my project of reviewing all of the film cameras that I own. And today's camera is the Kodak Duaflex II camera with the Kodet Lens. This thing. Ooh. I don't know if I've So first thing, let's talk about the camera itself. This thing is simple. I mean, like, simple. There is one button, there's one lever, there's one knob. That's it. There is literally shutter. You have your lever. Your lever over here is either I or B. That sets your shutter speed. It can either be I, which is 1/30th of a second, or B, which would be bulb. You can hold as long as you want. And then there is the film advance knob. That's it. That's all that is in this camera. It is a TLR style camera, so in order to take a photo, you're actually going to look down through the top, just like so, and then take the photo. It's actually really handy in how it's like the button is just right there. It's really easy, really intuitive, and really kind of like a unique camera. So why, talking about the simplicity of this camera is maybe a weird place to start, but why is it so simple? And that's because this is one of those first cameras that came in the post-World War II era, as the suburbs became a thing and everybody had a car, and all kind of that like sprawl that started in that baby boomer era. And so with that's when Kodak was exploding. Kodak was the thing, which they'd already had the Brownie. They were already Kodak by then, but a lot of it would have been in black and white. A lot of it would have been not quite as accessible. And during this time, you'd have something like a Leica, like an M3 would have been coming out about the same time. And that would be much more for the professional or towards the pro hobbyists, the people who are really into photography. But these cameras are designed for everybody. This is basically like the iPhone camera of its era. This is the thing that would just have been in anybody's pocket. Similar to also a Kodak Brownie, but this is the TLR style, so you're looking down and taking a photo, whereas that would be a looking through style. I have one of those, and who knows, maybe someday I'll get around to making a review of it too. But with that, this camera is designed so that anybody can do photography and can make it easy. It's a square format camera, so it's designed to take 12 photos on a roll of 620 film. 620 film is basically the same thing as 120 film, but with a slightly thinner, slightly different spool that it's wound up on. So I can pull these out and show you. Right here we have a roll, one of those 620s, and right next to it I have one of these 120s. And if you look up close, you can definitely see that this is much, much thinner, partly because it is made of aluminum, so it's a little bit easier to make it thinner than the plastic versions that we see today. But that's really the only difference. That only difference existed because Kodak wanted to make sure that people could only buy Kodak film to use through the Kodak cameras, which I'm sure they would be making the argument of, it just works so much easier, the system is just all together, it just works. It's like some other company that markets the same way. One of the things that is so simple about this camera is that it doesn't have a focusing mechanism. And so it has an f8 lens down here, and there are only the two options of how long the exposure is going to be, either 1/30th of a second, or it's going to be the bulb, so as long as you want. There are other ones, and this one, I think it does have contacts for, you could put a flash onto it, and so that's much more what you would be using the bulb for, because you're going to be using it inside, so you can hit the flash and hold it for half a second or something, try to get a little bit more ambient light to show around the scene as you're lighting that subject, but it's going to be super duper simple. And outside, you're definitely going to only use it for that 1/30th of a second. Personally, I really love focusing down through this viewfinder here. This is something I'm really pretty used to because I use my RZ67 all the time, and so I'm pretty used to looking down on the ground through the ground glass. But it is awesome because by not having a focusing element, it doesn't have to have the same kind of haze and ground glass that you would in a focusing one, and it's all just clear and just easy to see and to look around. And obviously it takes time to learn because when you move left it moves right, and when you move right it moves left inside the viewfinder, and that takes time to get used to, but it's really not that hard. And again, this simplicity is really handy of just like being able to just go out, see a photo, and take it. It's pretty cool. On top of that, this camera is extremely light, like super duper light. I mean, if I put this around my neck, I'm gonna forget that I have this thing on. This is definitely the lightest medium format camera that I own. And it's pretty awesome for that exact reason, just because I can, when it's loaded, when I'm out using it, it's comfortable, it's forgettable, it's just easy thing to throw with you, and you know, the light durability of it is helpful to just like throw in a bag and roll. I mentioned over here is the film advance, and so that is right here, and as you're advancing, there's this little red window in the back, and if you look through there, you can see the number of the film is on. And so all the backs of 120 film have numbers for pretty much everything from 645, 66, 67, and probably 69 as well, so that as you're moving the film through, these numbers are appearing and you can know which frame you're on. More modern medium format cameras will have some sort of an automatic winder. So like my RZ has the big lever you push down on the side, or my RZ6 or my Mamiya 6 has that lever across the top. And so with those, it's going to be a much more mechanized, much more systematic movement. This is just going to move through here, and you just have to watch yourself and know that like, oh, it's on 6, I gotta turn until it gets to 7 and take pictures. But that's also super fun because that means you can take double exposures really, really easily because it's just ready to go. So how have I used this camera? I've actually only put 2 rolls of film through it in the time that I've had it. This is a camera that I inherited when my grandpa passed away, and most of the cameras ended up in my house because they know me. The first roll I put through was this really old Kodak film that I use from time to time, and I had tried to sand down and cut down the outside of the 120 film spool so that it would go through here, and I just put it inside the film and tried to rotate it through. But even that, I didn't remove enough of the plastic. It was just so hard to turn the turn. So I was in Oregon and I decided to shoot another roll, and I had forgotten my dark bag, so I went into the garage, went under a blanket, under a jacket, and then put my hands inside the jacket backwards. And then I took a roll of Portra 400 and unspooled it, and then re-spooled it here onto the 620 film. And I think that's where my problems came in that re-spooling thing. When I re-spooled, it just didn't lay quite as flat as it does when it's done mechanically, as it does when it comes directly from Kodak. And so, as the film is here in the back, it's going across that plane, and that should be really pretty flat if you want your photos to be in focus. And I think there was just like little bits of bubbles every time it would come through here, and so it wasn't laying quite as flat. And so the photos that I was taking out on Cape Kiwanda the day that I decided to go shoot this film, some of them turned out really crisp, some of them had spots that were in focus and other spots that weren't. And I don't think it's the lens, because like I said, I have shot it before, and those photos were all completely in focus like you would expect, especially with an f8 lens. That's gonna say that maybe from like a meter or 2 away from you on through until infinity should be in focus. But these bubbles were what was kind of messing with things. And so that was just, it was a bummer. And like if I'm looking back, I don't know if I would do the re-spooling thing again as much as I would, again, try to clean down this. I've seen people online like flip a belt sander or a power sander down and try to like sand down the edges to make this spool be as thin as possible before putting it in. I think I would go that route rather than trying to re-spool onto the old 120s. Now definitely put the 120 in the uptake because that makes it a lot easier. But as far as the off spool, rather than having to re-spool the one that you are pulling from, I just don't know if it's really worth it. There are companies that sell, like the Film Photography Project sells re-spooled modern film onto that, but a 5-pack of Portra is going to run you $75, which is significantly more than you would pay for a regular pack of it. Now, if you're just going to do 5 and this is the only thing you're going to do ever, I don't know, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's saving the time. If you don't own a power sander, that's definitely cheaper than buying a power sander is. But I don't know. I just don't know if I would do it. I don't know if I would jump for that price point. They do have other ones that are a little bit cheaper, especially if you're going to be sticking in the black and white realm, just because black and white film is cheaper. That said, I would definitely trust them a lot more to do their re-spooling just because they have a lot more practice at it and probably some sort of a mechanism. Now, I assume it is hand rolled as well, but they know what they're doing, whereas compared to like doing it under a jacket in a garage, I'd probably screw it up. As far as loading this camera goes, all you have to do to open it is just simply open up this back, just like so. There's a little button right on the top, super easy to load. When you are loading this film, the way that you would want to do it is the bottom here is the take up, and the bottom here is where the film is coming from. The top is what the film is going to. So this is your take up would go in here. To load first that leader film, I'm going to take off this one here. This is one of the 620s that I have, and all you would have to do is just to put it on. So there's the little knobs, and this is like slightly bendy plastic, and so it's pretty easy to put on there. Now this is just a roll of 120, so I don't want to shove it on there because it is a little bit too wide and I don't want to mess anything up. But that would go on there. You would then pull film across the 6x6 gap here, just like so, and that slides right on here, and you'd be able to put your take-up spool right on the top, slide it right into the middle notch there and twist it just like you would any other medium format film. And once you're on there, you're ready to go. Close the door and start turning that knob until you'll go through and you'll be able to see a bunch of numbers, some arrows, and just keep going until you see the first one appear inside that red dot, and that's when you know you're ready to go. So as you've seen in some of these photos, that's what I was saying about the focusing. And I don't, like I said, it's not the camera, because I have shot those first photos that turned out good. It's definitely something about the way that the film came through the plane, which is a bit of a bummer, just because I think that these photos could have really stood out. There's this one here of my friends, and then the C-stack on there that turned out really cool with kind of that like almost tilt shift effect that is really awesome. And there's a few others on here that I think turned out okay, especially this one also has that same kind of really depth of field-y thing that I did not expect for a camera that can't focus. But at the same point, I wouldn't want to do that again. I'd like to fix that. But that said, the colors really came through. Like, these feel extremely nostalgic. They don't, for some reason, even though I'm shooting with Portra 400, this doesn't feel like Portra 400 in the modern sense. I was using it midday, I was using it sun on, all those kind of things that like make it feel like I was in the late 1950s and I didn't know what I was doing with photography. But at the same point, the colors really came through in a very nostalgic, classic kind of way. And I think that does come to do with that Kodet lens here. That is, I mean, mine's a little bit dirty, and so it has a little bit of grain and dust and all those kind of things that make it feel authentic, because it literally is. Like, this is a camera that is now almost 70 years old, and that's pretty cool to me, making photos with it. This is the same thing that, you know, my grandpa was using to photograph my dad, which is pretty rad. That said, what's my verdict on it? I honestly don't know if I'll use it again. And I think it's a lot of that has to do with just the difficulty of using 620 film. In the right scenario, totally. If I was, let's say I was shooting a beach elopement or something like that, I might go for that. Just because this would create that vintage feel, the vintage effect. And then would just sand down the outside of the 120 rolls and put it through here. But that's kind of about it. I think for now, this is mostly just going to be a shelf queen for me, but it has been really fun to pull out and to see what it was like to make photos back in kind of like the dawn of consumer photography, and to feel what it was like to be Ray Tobiasen in 1955 taking photos of his family, and it was pretty fun. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a good one.